Aloha, my name is Paul Morgan, and I'm here to take you through training and development for our campaign, Paul Morgan for Governor Inc., hashtag Win 2022. You can find this at paulmorganforgovernor.com, and let's go through the training and development. So this is the first video that we want to plant the seed of all who come on to be aboard with the campaign, and it's just the idea that we all believed. So we're going to share this video. It lasts a little bit over 2 minutes. It's not an endorsement by NBC or any other entity. It's just simply a video to plant the seed of we believed. So here we go.
Tonight, you haven't won here in 17 years. You had players out with COVID, coaches out with COVID, facility closed, very little practice. No one believed you could come here and win. What made you believe?
We believed. The people on the outside don't matter to us. It's on the inside, and we believed the whole time, and that's all that matters. We had Michael Dunn stepped in at left guard for Joel Bitonio, and then Michael got hurt, and a guy named Blake that I introduced myself to literally in the locker room before the game stepped up in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, we have a resilient team. Defense played great in the first half, and we kind of stalled out and let them kind of climb back into the game. But it's a great team win right there. Guys stepping up all over the board. I'm proud of these guys.
You talked about the offensive line. How did you not only survive behind that line, but actually thrive?
Getting the ball up quick, great game plan, and then AVP called it great. I mean, we trusted in our plan and just went out there and executed.
Next week, you head to Kansas City. What do you see in your team that makes you believe once again that you can take down the defending Super Bowl champs?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great challenge for us, but I said it last week after we won the game to get in the playoffs. You know, once you're in, anything can happen, and we believe in ourselves, and we're going to keep it that way.
What is going through your mind right now? What's the emotion?
I'm ready to get back in the locker room and see these guys.
Go get them.
Appreciate it.
All right, Baker, congratulations.
All right, as I mentioned before, this is not an endorsement by NBC. We don't own the copyright of this. We're just using it as an example of a parallel between sports and real life of just keeping the faith, and we believe in what we're doing. We believe. This is the official QR code for the campaign, so you can scroll your smartphone over this and take a picture of it and then share it with other people, and it'll take everyone directly to the website, paulmorganforgovernor.com, paulmorganforgovernor.com. You can also find us at Facebook at Paul Morgan for Governor as well. So Paul Morgan for Governor on Facebook and paulmorganforgovernor.com on the website or through the internet. This is how we organize. Paul Morgan for Governor Inc. is a candidate committee and is tax exempt under Rule 157, IRS Room 527 rather. And there's 3 legs to the campaign. As you see, the campaign advisors and candidate committee, that's our local group, of which Monique DuPont is the campaign chairwoman and Laurie Darling is our treasurer. Our in-house staff also initially volunteers and eventually will be staff. Currently, I'm the fundraising coordinator until we have that fundraising coordinator. Jen Davis is volunteer coordinator. Nicole Soong is the scheduler, support coordinator. Larry Partita is also our operations, including the communications coordinator. Robbie Rich is the issues coordinator, and Eric Grayson is the community events organizer. To the campaign supporters, the third leg in the campaign. So utilizing that support coming from the national perspective of the RNC down to the state's Republican parties, to the county's Republican parties, cities and towns, and then the influential Republicans. We're focusing on, and our ask is going to the Republicans who've actually won their races, Republicans who've won. So you see in the bottom right, we have this little house, and this little house will take you to the table of contents. And the table of contents is that area where is basically organized in training and development. So the cover was what you saw, Paul Morgan for Governor, the official logo. we believe, is that video you just saw as well, and what you just saw as far as the organizational diagram, how we're organized, that QR code. And as we go through this training development, we're not going to click all of the links inside the Campaign Spending Commission and the Office of Elections. This PowerPoint will be available on our website, Facebook page as well. So it may serve as a guide to help people who may eventually want to run for office. So just utilizing the platform of what we created, take it, make it your own, going through it, and share with people who may be interested in running for office. But it'll also be that training development as everyone comes into our campaign, so we can point people in the right directions and actually let them know what our campaign platform is. So this is just serving as a campaign platform. So let's go to Campaign Spending Commission. So these, as I mentioned, these are hyperlinks, the State of Hawaii Spending Commission. So it's going to take you to that page and show you exactly what they're set up to do. They basically oversee all the campaign spending in the state of Hawaii. And this is the link to the commissioners. So you have an idea of who the commissioners are, and the contribution limits depending on what race you're running for. And then the candidate filing system, how to actually get that documentation filed electronically and how it actually works. And then they will fine you if you're not in compliance with their rules. So having that relationship to clearly understand what you're getting into, we have a relationship with them. We call them and ask questions about anything and everything that comes to top of mind. So the action part, as you'll see, as we go through the different slides, you're going to see the topic, the education, and the action. So the topic is simply what we're talking about now. And the education is the information that you need to know from those particular entities or what we're talking about in an abbreviated version. Of course, we want you to do your homework and dig in deep in order to eventually get to the action. So the action of the Campaign Spending Commission is to educate the public and request a direct training from the Campaign Spending Commission. Before you contact them, the ask is that you have all relevant questions. So just write them down. We know as you go through, and we found this to be true, that when you have questions and they're answered, you create, or there are more questions that evolve from that. So just have your initial questions written down as you contact them. Apply that education and then follow up that education with the Campaign Spending Commission if you have more questions. So the next topic is the Office of Elections. So anything related to voting from a state level to the county election division. So from registering to vote and how to do it, that link will take you there to the board of registration and understanding clearly what they do. So if there's something that you need to report that you see or that you know to be a fact about voter fraud, to ways that you think things can be better, this is who you contact, the Office of Elections. And you see the Election Commission and knowing who they are, Reappointment Commission, and knowing that this happens every 10 years in order to keep the different districts equal, so to speak, as far as population and votes. And then ask an election official, that is their website, their Facebook page, where they have talk stories about questions that they have that come through their office. And this next to last link, State of Hawaii Boards and Commission, that's one of the asks that we'll ask everyone to, as they want to be more involved in politics or in the government, or just simply helping out and volunteer with their expertise. You may be retired, you may not be retired. The State of Hawaii Boards and Commission, there's over 170 boards and commissions that the governor actually approves and appoints, from real estate to insurance and on down the list. And then there's a county election division, so you'll know clearly where they are. The action, as far as Office of Election, it comes down to register to vote. And of course, you're probably already set up to register to vote. So that means you know how easy it is to register to vote. So now let's register others to vote. And eventually we'll get to the part of scaling out, get out to vote, because we know how easy it is to vote in Hawaii. And we're going to ask that you register to be a poll worker through the Office of Elections in your local county election division. Because being inside, we know that the volunteers are our aunties and uncles who are doing the best that they can. So having some energy and having some help in order to know the voting process and being able to make a contribution to help out, and also knowing the rules from inside out. These links, as I mentioned, they're hyperlinks to the direct sites. So you have this and it'll be on the Facebook page and as well as on our website. Fundraising, of course, all campaigns need fundraising. That's how you get the message out. That's how you're able to travel. That's how you actually able to just get things done outside of volunteers. So we're going to ask for the maximum contribution of $6,000 per election cycle. So that means that's a 4-year period for the race of governor. So the aggregate of what any individual can donate is $6,000 total. So you can break that down, of course, over 4 years, 48 months, or on an annual basis, or just pay it up front, donate it up, contribute it up front. We're going to also ask to host a fundraiser for those volunteers who decide to help us from a fundraising perspective. And if they're not able to contribute the maximum $6,000, then host a fundraiser where the goal would be $6,000. So if that's 100 people at $60 per person, or 1,000 people at $6 per person. So working with us to coordinate that is one of our asks. And we'll also ask the in-state base for the maximum contribution of $6,000 and the out-of-state base for the same ask. And we'll ask everyone to support with purchasing a spirit pack. And the spirit pack is official gear from the campaign, we think head to toe. So the hat, the mask, the shirt, the t-shirt actually, and the pin and the bumper sticker. And of course, the action is contribute on the Facebook page, and that's where you find access to contributing and purchasing the spirit pack. Get out to vote. So having our volunteers be leaders in their communities to organize up to 10 voters in your precinct for the sake of get out to vote. And that's awareness on how to vote in your precinct. So providing this education on those different areas that you saw from the previous slide, this is what goes in order to utilize below the following links to educate voters: how to register to vote, Board of Elections, and knowing the difference between absentee ballot and understanding how that process works, to voting by mail, which is what we're doing now currently in Hawaii. The action is coordinate a consistent plan of action with your team, meet weekly or as organized, and target only Republican base, because we're in one of 3 phases, which the initial phase, what we're in now, is the primary phase, eventually goes to the general phase. And from the general phase, what we categorize as celebratory phase, where we simply thank people and continue on the mission of staying consistent in teaching people how to do this. Ask the Republican base to share the message with others in the base, and ask the Republican base to share the message with family, friends, and relationships. People that they know, trust, love, and respect, and vice versa, that know, love, trust, and respect them. Community events. So as we get into the campaign, which is what we currently are now, our week is pretty much organized. Monday and Wednesdays will be those one-on-one times that we meet with influencers, individuals who are in the base. And as we meet people who are in the middle, right, so to speak, we're having those one-on-one discussions with them. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we'll have our town hall meetings. And then on Saturdays will be our community events. So what we categorize as a community event is anything outside of our team meetings. So the big events will be held on Saturdays between 10 and 2. Volunteers arrive and set up at 10. Volunteers in their assignments by 11:30. Community events goes live from 12 to 1. And volunteer who are volunteering to break down and clean up, basically in that too. So just because you're showing up to help set up doesn't mean you're going to be here for the actual event, because we understand everyone's time is valuable and everyone has life going on, including families, which one of our hashtag is build families first. So the action will be to register online to be a part of the campaign, and going through the website, you can let us know how you want to be a part of the campaign. The Spirit Pack is the exclusive attendance, so we know who our people are, who our team is. And a part of the parties, being a part of a party, is to support candidates and also to help candidates win in their offices. So the itinerary will be online, so everyone will know what we have going on, concessions live, and that's simply anything that's going to be purchased from the campaign. And Facebook Live will promote our events through Facebook Live. So if you're not able to physically be there, and as things open up, Facebook will allow for unlimited participation. The town halls, I just mentioned those. So the town halls being on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and this is those nonprofits and for-profits, the group setting. So on Tuesdays, it'll be from 10 a.m. until 11, and then also from 1 p.m. until 2 p.m. Thursdays for the for-profits, 10 to 11, and then 1 until 2. And in those town halls, we'll do a survey of what do you want personally, what do your organization need, and does that support all citizens of Hawaii? where do you currently volunteer, and what are issues in your industry? So we're going to work to resolve these from each of these groups, and just being notified or educated on what the issues are based off of those groups. We're currently doing the surveys from a chamber perspective, Chamber of Commerce perspective, to an educational institution such as University of Hawaii, Hilo, or University of Hawaii, Manoa, or just some of the groups who are doing the work of identifying the issues in the community from a local perspective to a state perspective. Healthcare, education, technology have been the top three that have come up. So getting that feedback from those nonprofits and for-profits from their particular perspective will help us as we eventually create this plan that's going to work in the best interest of all citizens of Hawaii. To local incorporating local issues, and then affordable housing. And then in those meetings, we'll of course request to schedule the one-on-one, and they'll have that capacity, or that they'll be able to schedule those meetings through our websites as well. So the action is, we'll do our meetings via Zoom and eventually push them out through Facebook Live so people will have access to them. And then it'll always be a top-down approach for the sake of scale. So we want to reach the influencers down to every nonprofit and for-profit in order to gain that feedback from them, from their perspective of what they're experiencing. You know, what do you want personally? What is it? What does your organization need? And then does that support all citizens of Hawaii? And we're going to start on time and end on time. That's the time management piece. And ask for legal support. So in the areas of data, facts, relationships, and personal liability to business liability, because it's about safety first, safety first. We have identified 23 talking points. We always want to be able to get in win 2022, plant that seed of winning, and that's simply winning governor of Hawaii 2022. Paul Morgan for Governors is about bringing people together. And on any of these talking points, we're able to expand back to a historical perspective of why the Republican Party was started. And I'll share some of my insights on why I'm a Republican as well, to bring all those things together so we know why we're going back to the basics and what that means. And if you think about it, we all want the same things of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and being able to clearly articulate what life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, what those things are. And we're about helping people to help themselves. So just the talking points and being able to expand on those different things as we have more contact and relationships and talk stories with individuals and organizations, everyone will know their why they're supporting the campaign. They'll know their own convictions as how it plays into how we're working together to bring people together. And you'll know your own stories can relate, and know when you made the sale. So you know when you've had that conversation with the person that you're talking with, or the nonprofit or for-profit, then you know when you've met on common ground, and then know when to pivot to the ask. So we're asking for anyone to contribute or host a fundraiser, and we're recruiting volunteers and support at community events. So we're asking our volunteers to stick in one lane. So the fundraising side, the recruiting volunteer side, and the support at those community events, because everyone's time is valuable. And by having everyone specialize in one of these different areas, we believe it's efficient in carrying and delivering the message. So starting from the foundational perspective of this platform, this PowerPoint, to make sure everyone is educated and has a clear sense of what we're talking about. These are more of the talking points, 6 through 10, and 11 through 15, and 16 through 20, and then the last 3. So the issues, as we mentioned earlier about how the issues are, how we're gathering the issues, is from the groups who are doing the studies, the focus studies, the surveys, the community assessment surveys that have the data, and they're going to approach it from a different perspective. Whereas we're running for governor, we're going to approach it from a foundational perspective. So just seeing the ABCs under the education, and then the 1, 2, 3 of the actual action, that's how we're breaking down how we approach the issues from a foundational perspective. So let's take the issue of healthcare. So the education piece is we want to recruit physicians, nurses, physicians assistants, nurse practitioners, and executives, people, places, and things. So the people are these particular people that we want to recruit from the places where they're in training to become full-time assistants, physicians, nurses, physicians assistants. So those training institutions, colleges, universities, that in those particular towns, that cities, that have these schools. I was fortunate that I went to Vanderbilt University, and there's a medical school, there's a nursing school, and you have 2 or 3 other universities in the same city. So that's a recruiting pool for those second and third year medical students to come to Hawaii to eventually uh, be recruited to Hawaii to start their practices or work in the hospitals or the clinics in Hawaii. So basically taking people, places, and things that we need or in crisis and that we need, and building from that foundation. The B, or the nonprofit 501c3, is that incentive to have those people start those businesses or be in Hawaii to deliver these services from an issues perspective. So we know that hospitals and the clinics, um, physicians who work with them, that's one of the ways that their income can be exempt. Currently, we know that physicians who actually private practice in Hawaii, their income is not exempt. So, doing your homework on knowing that this is a common thing in the field of medicine. So what we would do is, what we're working to do as we go through this campaign, is to create that nonprofit, that 501c3, that would exempt that first 2 million of physicians' income. And being a business person, you all know this. What that does when people have more disposable income, they spend locally, right? So that's a local stimulus package in and of itself. A part of that 501c3 will be that pilot study abroad facility. So between those institutions, those places, and those things, those medical schools abroad, on the mainland, having that relationship in Hawaii with Hawaii, there's a fee that students usually pay to study abroad. So we want to position ourselves to be one of those study abroad facilities. And nights and weekends, we have the availability of Department of Education institutions, the schools, and also there are the private and charter schools and the immersion schools that are available to accommodate simply students doing their homework or whatever is needed to finish up what they're studying. We recruit from the general medicine perspective down to specialty medicine, including dental and the veterinarian. And of course, the pay it forward part, or the return on investment for that 501c3 and the exemption of that income, would be the community service clinic. So that trade-off is they're providing community service in Hawaii. There's over 3,000 nonprofit as of this date in the state of Hawaii that these professionals would come in to be able to help out. And everybody has a different passion. So not necessarily say they're going to do something in medicine, but because of their passion and paying it forward in community service, of course, Hawaii is going to recruit with that aloha for those people that eventually stay here, and to help curb that medical physician nursing shortage. And then eventually that education pilot study abroad is a full speed program. And we've built those relationships with educational institutions across the country and the world. So following the second issue of education is pretty much the ABC approach, and the 1, 2, 3 as well. So instead of physicians in this particular issue, it's about education. So recruiting those accredited institutions from accredited institutions worldwide, motivated, they have a desire to be in education, and they have a high grade point grade point average, and they're holistic thinkers in their approaches to, of course, this is a negotiating standard of the people that we want to have in Hawaii. Following that nonprofit 501c3 pass-through, which will exempt that first $50,000 of income for the teachers. And we know, again, that's a stimulus, a local stimulus. And we'd encourage those teachers to invite their teacher friends to come to Hawaii, or just their friends to come to Hawaii for the sake of recruiting them as well, and just local stimulating the economy. You'd also start off as pilot teacher programs. It's very similar to the healthcare profession, and we recruit K through 12, that's kindergarten through 12th grade, the community college to the PhD level, and then the community service program is how the pay it forward happens. So having those professionals who've already completed the background checks, they're doing the right things for the right reason, helping from saving lives to educating the children. It's an opportunity for us to learn from them as they come and complete that community service as they're here, and recruit the ones that have the aloha and pay it forward. So the third issue of technology. So technology, we know without the internet, that's an issue, right? So having the internet being pull together through those public-private partnerships and extend it to all areas of Hawaii, and utilizing, as we mentioned, the public-private partnerships of the state, local, and federal government, and the Army Corps of Engineers and the military, in order to get that internet to those parts of the island that don't have the access. So having that nonprofit, that incentive part to those companies who are actually going to create those opportunities and actually physically be in Hawaii to exempt that first 2 million of income, and also educate them on the work opportunity tax credits for the employees that they hire who are living in Hawaii. And it would also exempt that income up to $50,000. Again, it goes back to that local stimulus package, or locally stimulating the income of the islands. And then that community service program where they pay it forward for that return on investment. And again, that private partnerships. Local issues is about learning how to incorporate, and from incorporating to chartering, and from chartering, understanding the grants and the support and accountability, that'll be added as a part of that. So bottom line, it comes down to local responsibility. Affordable housing. So again, those public-private relationships, and the pilot project would be with those first essential employees and teachers, police, fire, military, VA. And because of some of the relationships from USDA Rural Development that has the self-help program, and this particular group who are literally putting their lives on the line to help people, this will be the first group that we work with in order to build those affordable housing. That self-help program allows for grant funding to buy the land, and from the land, it also provides other grants so that they're able to build their own housing. So a part of building housing is that they help each other build each other's houses. So at that point, we scale that. That program is nationwide, and show people that it actually works, and spread that message. The homeless retreats, because we do have a homeless issue in the state of Hawaii. So understanding that, going back to the beginning of healthcare, education, technology, that community service with these organizations that need those help, that's how all of these things are, is basically concurrent planning on different levels, for the sake of addressing these issues from a foundational perspective. So in those places where the shelters are, those buildings that are no longer in any kind of use, or that's owned by the government, we'd use those areas for those temporary shelters, in order that these people are coming to get medical care, they get the medical care, and they get some education from those people who are helping from the education perspective. They get the hygiene and the food that they need because of those public-private partnerships. And the part of that, they would have that internet in order to be able to contact their families and friends. We'd expand this based off of the scale. Economic development. So the soft shift from tourism, and the shift is to research and development. And these are with companies that currently have a footprint in Hawaii, focusing on energy first, because we have access to 3 natural resources: sun, wind, and water. And all of you know that manufacturing is the key to economic development, and we're able to manufacture that energy, which comes from the sun, the wind, and the water. And following that scale, basic needs would be second. So the things that are affected by energy would follow the energy. And just having those relationships with the different entities that are set up to help small businesses scale, and having those relationships from the Patent Trademark Office to the Copyright Office, for the sake of intellectual property that's created in Hawaii, will stay in Hawaii along with the money, and utilizing U.S. friendly manufacturing companies to scale production and to direct ship from those U.S. Friendly manufacturing companies, and utilizing U.S. transportation companies based out of Hawaii in order to get it to where it needs to go directly. So it comes down to, Hawaii, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want for yourself and your organizations? What does that look like? And does it support all citizens of Hawaii? Because as we go through this, what we're considering is that budget that the state of Hawaii has. And from that budget, there's 26 different departments that are affected by that budget. So as we campaign, as we talk with people, we want to continue to inform that we're campaigning in a way that it doesn't increase the Hawaii operating budget, because we all know the state of Hawaii right now as far as the financial perspective. And it doesn't cause people to think that they will lose their jobs. And it's in the best interest of all citizens of Hawaii. So decide now, because we begin work November 9th, 2022. So the idea of what we're putting together is pilot projects, because pilot projects, we're not just throwing money anywhere and everywhere. We want to make sure that we have a pilot project that's scaled, and based off of the evidence, we know we're ready to scale that project. So considering the state resources, the federal resources, the private, the local, and nonprofit resources, so everyone plays their part. Everyone plays their part for the sake of efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity. Comes down back to the public-private relationships. So the local, state, federal, international, and the private, combining that with what resources are brought to the table from the state, federal, private, local, and the nonprofit resources. Everyone's doing their part. And it comes down to, we've had a lot of questions about what's our position on the Jones Act. And so, of course, Jones Act reform, why not? And to manufacture ships in Hawaii. So the negotiating point is, yeah, we may not be able to negotiate manufacturing ships in Hawaii, but what can we manufacture in ships that bring those supplies to the state of Hawaii for the sake of our return on investment? The headquarters beneficiaries in Hawaii, so headquarter them physically in Hawaii, creating jobs as well. Rebuild ships with more companies and Hawaii-owned companies that can be a part of shipbuilding. And eventually those Hawaii-owned companies, for the sake of negotiation, if they need to be located in those cities where they're building ships, then they're at least Hawaii-owned companies. And considering the action part of this, of having those meetings with congressmen, senators, state representatives, state senators, and governors for the sake of negotiating that reform, negotiating that reform. So now we're down to the 10 asks. So as a volunteer with the campaign, what we're asking as far as the campaign. So of course, that one-time contribution of $6,000 contribute at your maximum level. We understand that there's a pandemic going on, and host a fundraiser with a $6,000 minimum pledge. Buy a spirit pack at $100, and the spirit pack consists of the hat, the mask, the t-shirt, the pen, and the bumper sticker. Support our community events, whether on-site, online, or archived. And the archive perspective is simply just playing some of the recorded content for the sake of training and development. Online is simply administering the Zoom or the Facebook or the website, one of those different things. And the on-site is just simply showing up to help out with the community events. So what you see as the action part, as we talk with people, we just want to make sure that volunteers have a clear way of asking and knowing how to ask. So the pitch is the 10 asks: the listen, the prod, the listen, the confirm, listen more, prod more, compliment, and then qualify, and then close. All right. More of the 10 ask. So referral to local, national, and international 1, 2, and 3. So influencers already accessible to volunteers. So that's people that who are in TV, radio, newspaper, social media, and podcasts, to have us on, to be able to share the story. And they say the best form of advertising is word of mouth, right? That's one way to get it out. But TV, radio, newspaper, they have bigger mouths. So that's why we want to go and utilize them. Educators already accessible to volunteers. So for-profit institutions, trade associations, financial institutions, nonprofit, and sports entities, in order to be able to share the message. And philosophers already accessible to volunteers as well, from a church, temples, synagogues, worship, and meditations. This is not an attempt to recruit any type of 501c3 entity or church or group or organization. Is simply for the sake of educating them on what we're doing in the office of governor for the state of Hawaii. And then, of course, 7 through 10, upload a testimonial to a Facebook page, like, share, and positive post to our social media. And that speaks for itself. Like, share, and positive post on our social media, and recruit volunteers to do 1 through 10. We want to thank everyone verbally, everyone for their time. Thank you for your time and your great attitude, and for what you did to help carry the message of the campaign. 2 is the written piece, the contributors, and the volunteers and referrals. Thank you for the referrals and the different stages, the 3 stages that we're thanking people in the primary, the general, and the celebration begins November 9th. Of course, there's a call to action, and with that call to action is just simply join us, contribute, volunteer, fundraise, host fundraisers, support community events, recruit volunteers, training and development, win 2022, Paul Morgan for Governor of Hawaii. And that action part is to take someone's phone, pull that QR code up so they can just scan over it very easily, and it'll take them directly to the website, paulmorganforgovernor.com, or that Facebook page where they can contribute and sign up to be a volunteer and get educated on Paul Morgan for Governor. Also recruit volunteers, and let's win 2022. This is the QR code. We'll just leave this up for a few where you can scan it. It'll take you directly to our website. And we believed again. So let's hear this again. Again, this is not an endorsement by NBC or by the National Football League or any of these entities. It's just an educational piece that we want to share the message of believing.
Tonight, you haven't won here in 17 years. You had players out with COVID, coaches out with COVID, facility closed, very little practice. No one believed you could come here and win. What made you believe?
We believed. The people on the outside don't matter to us. It's on the inside, and we believe the whole time, and that's all that matters. We had Michael Dunn stepped in at left guard for Joel Batonio, and then Michael got hurt, and a guy named Blake that I introduced myself to literally in the locker room before the game stepped up in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, we have a resilient team. Defense played great in the first half, and we kind of stalled out and let them kind of climb back into the game. But it's a great team win right there. Guys stepping up all over the board. I'm proud of these guys.
You talked about the offensive line. How did you not only survive behind that line, but actually thrive?
Getting the ball up quick, great game plan, and then AVP called it great. I mean, we trusted in our plan and just went out there and executed.
Next week, you head to Kansas City. What do you see in your team that makes you believe once again that you can take down the defending Super Bowl champs?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a great challenge for us, but I said it last week after we won the game to get in the playoffs. You know, once you're in, anything can happen, and we believe in ourselves, and we're going to keep it that way.
What is going through your mind right now? What's the emotion?
I'm ready to get back in the locker room and see these guys.
Go get them.
Appreciate it.
All right, Baker, congratulations.
All right, so win 2022. And that is the end of training and development. And I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your support, and thank you for helping us to win 2022.